Many of you have read the book, and I'd really appreciate questions, even as I speak or as I, if you have any questions. Uh, Baba obviously has his nazar on this book, uh, Mir Baba, From Boyhood to Godhood. The first edition sold out in 18 days and very quickly. So we printed a second edition, and that sold out as well. And now we printed a third edition, and we have just about 30 copies left. Wow. So Baba has his nazar on this book, and we all are pleased that it has done so well.
Do you mean edition or printing? Was the content?
No, we updated a little bit here and there, changed pictures, changed a little bit of text in the third printing.
Okay.
There were a couple of errors that had crept in that we rectified, and so this is it was like a fresh new printing.
Okay. Revision.
Yes, sir.
Is there any signed copy left?
I'll be signing some afterwards. So, how did this begin? How did this all begin? When I was working on The Beloved, I didn't realize that I didn't have all the material of Baba's early years, his boyhood. So when I expressed my interest in working on Baba's biography, I'll backtrack a little bit. I was at Baba's feet on February 1st while his body lay in the tomb. And I had some unusual experiences. I just have an hour's time to narrate everything, so I won't go into greater detail. But at that moment, I wanted to do something for Baba for the years of good that he had done for me. So I thought to myself at that moment while sitting in the tomb with the door closed and Baba's body, and I'm holding his feet, and I thought to myself, what is it that I can do for Baba? What is it that has not been done in its full completion and that I can do for Baba? And I've seen a number of biographies of his perfect master, God, and all have been published, but they were not complete. So I wanted to do a complete biography of Baba, and I mentioned it to Erich and Mann afterwards. So they invited me to Mirazad, and I spent quite some time in Mirazad um, collecting material. And they opened up their literally coffers of archival material. Mani gave me lots and lots of pictures. Adi opened up all his photographs and said, take all the pictures that you want. So I took them all. And, he said, take the negatives. And I said, but Ali Kaka, I don't have the money to develop them. Because I had just started a job and I didn't have much money. So I just took the photographs and that was that. So Erich was particularly helpful and collected a lot of material. And Mani gave me her diaries of the early years, which she had also given a set to Francis Brabazon. But Francis hadn't done anything with that in his first volume that he had published. So this was virgin material for me. And the reason why it was so interesting was because it was exclusively on Meher Baba and her father, Sheviyar's early years. So I had all this material with me, and then what happened is that there was a Baba lover in Bombay who said that he had he had translated uh, Bailey Irani's diaries. Now, Bailey Irani was Baba's boyhood friend, and you'll read a great deal about him in this book. In his personal life, he never led a straight and narrow life, and then towards the end he drifted. But he was always very devoted to Baba, and then he was in a nursing home in Hyderabad, Secunderabad, where he passed away. And I was very fortunate. Just before he passed away, he wrote a letter to me saying that I'm just too poor to subscribe to the Glow. Can you send me a free copy? So I sent him a free copy, but then he passed away soon afterwards. So what happened was that his diaries, which were absolutely awesome, in the first person, uh, were given to me. But so he had 6 volumes of diaries, out of which volume number 2 was missing. So many years went back, and actually in 2006 or 2007, I got word that they had found from a dump of paper volume 2. So that was sent to me in a kind of Gujarati, which he wrote, which I couldn't understand or read. And most people who read Gujarati couldn't read because it was in old Gujarati. So one day, my wife and I were sitting in the dining room of the retreat, and we were talking about now how do we get this translated, and we saw an older Gujarati lady and a younger Gujarati lady walk in, and they were having their nail. So I went up to them and I said, I have a manuscript in Gujarati, which is on Baba's life, and would either of you be able to translate it? So they said, can we see it? I said, yes, sure. So they said, oh, yeah, we can read it because we are from Gujarat and we know the old Gujarati script. So, but then there's a problem. There's a car waiting for us to take us back to Bombay. And I don't know whether we can do it now. Can you give it to us? I said, no, I can't give it to you because I'll have to look for someone else to do this. So they talked to each other, and then I went back and I told Maruk, I said, this didn't work. A few minutes later, the lady comes and says, oh, this is an opportunity from Baba that I don't want to give up on. So would you, I'm asking my driver to stay at the lodge, and we're going to stay overnight. So we sat till 11 o'clock and translated the book. We couldn't completely do the book. We continued the next day, and they decided to stay on another day. And on the second day, we completed that volume 2 of the book. And that's how, now that was a very precious volume because it gave details of the early life of Merwan Shehryar Iran. So this was the genesis of how we collected all the material. And then in 2008, we decided that we would go and spend some day along with my wife, Marok, who's seated over there. And we decided that we would go and do research in Pune. Now, Bailey's diary had an enormous amount of material on their stay in the hut on Ferguson Road. Baba stayed in a hut on Ferguson Road. And I was determined to find that hut. But as it turned out, buildings had come up. The hut was not there any longer, and destroyed probably years back, and tall buildings had come up. But I knew the general location. So we found a young Parsi boy, a man, who said that he would devote all his time to photograph all the places associated with Merwan. So he spent hours and hours and hours, and hundreds of photographs were taken of all the places associated with Merwan, strictly Merwan. Because the places associated with Mer Baba were well known and photographed and all that. but this was strictly Mehrabad. So we did that. Then, going back to the time when I was staying in Merazad, and I had collected all this material, and I found some material which Adi had written in his diary. Adi decided that he would give me all his diaries from 1922 to 1969 for 3 years for me to copy everything that was of interest to me. And then I copied everything, kept it for 3 years, and returned it to him. But I also found Chanji's diaries, and I found a lot of diaries. At that moment, I went up to Mani. When Mani gave me her diary of her father's life in Iran, I asked her and Alova that I would like to write about Baba's early years. The Beloved I still hadn't worked on. But I had this thought at the back of my mind that I have so much material about Baba's early years that I should do something with it. So, so both Mani and Alova, particularly Alova, said, if you want to do anything about Sharia and the early years, you've got to go to Iran. So I decided that I would make a trip to Iran. And in 1976, my mother and I, my mother, Freni Nanawala, we decided that we would go to Karachi because they had organized a talk for me in Karachi, a public talk. It was quite an eventful talk. And from there, Iran is not very far from Pakistan, from Karachi. It's a short, not too long a flight. So we somehow arranged, Aloba arranged, got me connected with Asfandyar and some of the other Baba lovers there. And more importantly, there was one contact that I had, Farhad Shapa, who now lives in California and is one of the Sufis. So I had a contact with him. So with that contact, I decided, along with my mother, to go to Iran. So that's where our story begins. So when we went to Tehran, uh, in fact, we landed at Mehrabad International Airport. That's the name of the airport in Tehran. But it's MEHR, Mehrabad. It's not there. And strangely enough, it's not Mehrabad International Airport anymore. They've moved the airport to another place, but we landed there. So it was a nice, beautiful marble airport with didn't have a very spiritual feel about it, except that you saw all the Muslim men telling beads and women in burqas, and so we went past that, and then we were received at the airport and were taken to the village of Kashanak, and that was the village where Asfandyar Visali had his home. Are there people from Iran over here besides Farishte?
Yes, me.
Oh, you're from there too, Ali Raza.
No,
Yeah.
no.
So now, when you this is the so I consult my notes at the same time. So when we went past the Niavaran Imperial Palace, is what we went past. So this is the picture of the palace. Now, one of the factors that drew me to Iran and to visit Iran was the fact that Mani's notes had a lot of references to the suffering of the Zoroastrians. Now, I am just presuming that all of you know who the Zoroastrians are. Later on, when they migrated, they were known as Parsis. I'm a Zoroastrian and a Parsi. So her papers referred to the suffering of the Zoroastrians. Now, this is practically an unknown fact, and those who will read this book will know and understand as to the suffering of the. We are all aware of the Holocaust and the suffering of the Jews and the Armenians and the China Holocaust and so forth. But most people are unaware of the Zoroastrian Holocaust, the Holocaust of the Zoroastrians, the suffering that they went through. So I wanted to see firsthand whether I could gather stories about the suffering of the Zoroastrians. The reason primarily not because it was not it was just a historical fact, but also the fact that it was also the immediate cause for the Shariar's family to migrate, or rather, Mani's grandmother's family to migrate to India. That was the cause of the family trip. So when we went to we stay with Asfandar, his wife's name was also Chireen. We stayed with the family for quite some time, and they had three sons. Their names were Iraj, Faridun, and Parvez. Now, their house was attached to the palace of the Shah. And Asfandyar had been tormented by the mullahs at that time because he was known as a follower of a spiritual master who said that he was the same as Muhammad. So it was believed that the family was poisoned over a period of time. And Shireen had lost twins in that with arsenic poisoning. But their youngest son, Parvez, he suffered severe brain injury. I had met him, and that they were convinced, the family was convinced that Islamic zealots had poisoned their family, and they had written to Meher Baba, and Meher Baba told them not to take any legal action. So no legal action was taken against the Williams. So the period that the Zoroastrians suffered in was the Qajar period, the Qajar dynasty in Persia. Persia was the name of Iran. What today Iran is, it was known as Persia. So it was in the later years that the name of Persia was changed to Iran. So I'll take you to another. Now this is Asfandyar, his wife Shireen, and a friend of theirs. A picture that has also appeared in a book called The Boys. And this is an early picture of Asfandyar. This is a Zoroastrian family in the Qajar during the Qajar dynasty. So this was a kind of appearances they had. You couldn't distinguish them from the Muslims because there were a lot of them who externally followed the who externally appeared as if they were Muslims, but they were actually Zoroastrians. So I've come to this part. So then we were fortunate, I was fortunate to meet a man called Shams over there. He was a Muslim gentleman, an advocate, who had a photographic memory. And he told me all kinds of tales. His father was a friend of Sharia. And so he had first-hand knowledge of a lot of suffering that the family had undergone. So he narrated all kinds of stories to me about how I'm not going through the details, you could read about it in the book, but the uh, he told me of having known his father, having known Sharia, and how Sharia and his father worked as a Nase Salar, which means the caretakers of the Tower of Silence. So the Tower of Silence was a distance away in a place called Kasimabad. And there are you cannot enter the Tower of Silence anywhere. It's forbidden to enter the Tower of Silence. Um, uh, I don't know too many Zoroastrians except for those who carry the body into the Tower of Silence. So, but this was an abandoned Tower of Silence, and this was the Tower of Silence. So I photographed the door of the Tower of Silence through which bodies are taken in there. So that's what it is.
Excuse me, are these pictures in the book as well?
Yes, sir. They're in the book, but not all. Some of them are not. Most of them are. And this is the Tower of Silence from a distance. Okay. So then what happened was, so we went and saw the Tower of Silence from the, I went in and had a look, and, I'd never been inside a Tower of Silence, and nobody has. But these were abandoned Towers of Silence. So then we went to that's in about. Okay, so then we were told that we should visit the place where Sheriar lived, and that was a place called Khorramshahr. Now, it will amuse you to know that today, Mehraban Sheriar Irani would have been known as Mehraban Sherian Khorramshahi, because most Iranis, they adopted the name of their father or their ancestral name as their last name. So when they came to India, they gave up their family name, and although Meher Baba's relatives did have the name Khorramshahi, but when his father came to India, when Sheriar came to India, he adopted the name Irani in order to be a part of the rest of the Irani community, which was thriving over there in Pune and Bombay and Udwada and so forth. So we went to Khorramshahr, and let me see if I can. Okay. So this is a picture of Sheriar's house in Khorramshahr. And this is a lady called Parituk. This was the wife of Baba's cousin Shapur Mirdadi. This lady, Parituk. Her full name was Parituk Rodi. So she took us into this house. This is my mother. This is me in 1976. So she took us inside the house, and it had been renovated in 1936. But we were not too keen on having a look at the house as much as, are there any areas in this house that are original and which were there when Sheryar was there. And she took us to the cellar. And this cellar was the only place, she said, was in existence when Sheryar was there. So she made it a point of telling us that she had met Meher Baba in 1929 when Baba had been to Iran in 1929. And it was quite interesting that the people whom we met, they each one had a miraculous story to narrate about their meeting Meher Baba. Yeah. So this lady, she insisted on telling us the story that one day, and she was very poor, didn't have any flour. So she goes to a neighbor's house to beg for some flour so she can get some flour to make some rotis or whatever the Iranis make. She said she was in a dire straits. She begged her neighbor for. Neighbor didn't have much flour, gave her some. She came home, and when she went down to the cellar, they were brimming with flour.
Yeah.
So she had that kind of a story. We met another woman. This was very interesting. We met another lady. Now, Irani lady, when you met this lady, the first thing you saw was she had a small face, but a very heavy tuft of hair, long tuft of hair. And you said, you dismiss it, you don't particularly pay attention to the hair, but she had a story to narrate. She said that my mother, I was 12 years old, my mother took me to see Meher Baba in the public square, and I had a problem of falling hair. And she was going bald, and her mother was worried that she couldn't get married. So now you never hear these kind of stories in relation to Meher Baba. She said she took her to Meher Baba, and Meher Baba and cried and told her and said that look at my daughter will never get married, her hair is falling. And so Baba picks up the dirt and gives it to her and tells her to apply it on her head. And she had this heavy tuft of hair, which I can
Envy.
witness to testify that she had. So I mean, now how true it is or not, but everyone had a story to tell. And some of the stories I've narrated in the book as well. So then we went to a place called Jafrabad. And it was a small village, and Baba visited it in 1929. And nobody seemed to know where this village was, but they only knew of one man. His name was Hassan Mirabi, and this is the man. So we went to his village, which we were told, we were given directions to, and we went there, and he started speaking with us in English. And because most of the people did not speak English, but he did. And he said, I said, you speak good English. And he says, you know where I learned it? I learned it at the Hazrat Babajan school. So I said, we need to go to Jafrabad. He said, I'll take you. So he took us to Jafrabad. We had a rickety old taxi, and it got stuck in the sand several times. So we go into Jafrabad, and I took this picture. Now, this is the reason I took this picture was because it gave me a tremendous biblical feel. That it was something like out of a biblical town that Jesus may have walked on. And that's why I took this picture of as we were entering Jafrabad. And the other thought was that Baba would have walked this road. So when we walked into this village, it was completely deserted, not a soul in the whole village. So we shouted, Meher Baba, Where Baba? And two people came out of their little room. This lady and this man. Ardeshwari Yazdani and Wahabid Shiramardi came out. They were the only two residents of the entire village. And they would a truck would come with water every 2 weeks and give them water. So they had also seen Meher Baba years back, and they had this kind of a picture. They wanted me to photograph it with holding this picture. So we walked to Aga Baidul's house.
Did they meet Baba?
I think they did, because I wasn't able to converse with them at that time. And they were real old Persians, but they wanted to show us this picture. So then we all went up. Now, Aga Baidul, as I want to reintroduce you to him, but he was a very devoted Baba lover, part of Baba's Mandli, and was known as the must hunter because he had a nose for finding musts. Now, he had a house there in Jafrabad, and that's where he used to live. So we went to his house thinking, and Aloba had told us that when you go to Jafrabad and you go to Aga Baidul's house, you'll see pictures, framed pictures of Baba everywhere. We go into the house. We can't enter the house because there was a broken door. We pushed the door aside, and the whole house was rubble. Only rubble in the whole house. No pictures of Baba. Nothing. All we found was slate. And why did we find slate? Because there was once a school that Baba had financed for Persian children. So we found a lot of slate there. But otherwise, everything was, the walls were broken, the doors were broken. Only in Persian there was written Hazrat Meher Baba. And somebody had written in chalk. And I always, wherever I used to go to a Baba place that Baba had visited, I'd always like to take some kind of a souvenir or something from that place. And I couldn't find anything. So I picked up an empty oil bottle and I figured that somebody must have used this oil bottle. So very, very disappointed that I couldn't find anything. I was about to, my mother was with me, I was about to leave when I see a trap door. So I immediately jumped to the trap door and pulled it with all my strength because it was halfway covered with sand. So I pulled it and I tugged it and I pulled it and it opened, and here was my mother shouting, "Watch out for scorpions, there might be scorpions inside." But I was so excited, so I put my hand in and I'm moving my hand there and only sand. And then here I am with my looking for the with my hand inside, trying to, and suddenly my hand hits a bunch of paper. Quickly rub it, and there was a sheaf of papers that I pulled out. Papers, photographs that had been left in 1929, so 47 years later. So I see this letter, which I've reproduced in the book. I see this letter as if it were written yesterday. Everything was well, and these photographs were of some boys of Hazrat Babajan's school and Baba's pictures and photographs. And also there was a Baba's ghazal in it. And so there was quite a few things that I found, and I was very, very happy. So in that letter, which you'll notice, it says that this was obviously written, I think it was written from Quetta, and it said that His Holiness Meher Baba is visiting Iran on Nowruz Day, and so tell the people of Iran that His Holiness Meher Baba is coming. So that was. Now, this is a story that has appeared for the first time in this book and has never ever been recorded anywhere else. And I had heard this story from Shams, from my contact in Iran. And when I mentioned it to Bunny, she said, in all my years with Meher Baba, I have never ever heard the story. So I'm going to narrate it to you, and with that, I'll end it. So when the Zoroastrians went through their period of suffering at the hands of the Muslims, many of them took shelter in caves. And they did farming. So externally, they would look as if they were farmers, but on the inside, they would wear their sadra and kasti and follow their ancient religion inside these caves. So those Zoroastrians were known as Gufe Nashin. Gufe means caves, Nashin means dwellers, cave dwellers. And even today, some of these places, their bones are being found in various different places in Iran. Mm-hmm. So the story goes that the reason that they took shelter in these caves was because during the Qajar dynasty, the Muslims were destroying the holy books of the Zoroastrians, and they wanted to preserve these books. So they took some of the manuscripts and things like that and hid them in these caves. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, they took shelter in these caves as well and built their own little homes. So the story goes that Baba was driving from Karamshah to Jafrabad in 1929, and suddenly the car developed engine dropping for no apparent reason. And the car stopped. And Baba was pacing, he got out and he was pacing up and down, up and down. Suddenly, they see a horseman come up, riding furiously towards the car. And he stops a distance, and Baba and he exchange, they look at each other, and Baba said, my work is done. Now, whatever universal work he did in secrecy or in private, I'm assuming that it was, he raised the Zoroastrians economically and financially, and soon after 29, things began to change in Iran as well. There were delegations from India, from British India to Iran, and the Shah was receptive to Zoroastrians and so forth. So my interpretation was that, and Baba said that this was a Gufe Nashin. That was all he told the Mandri. And so the fortunes of the Zoroastrians changed as a result of this incident. That was my interpretation, but Baba alone knows what it was. So there's a lot to share, and so this is a picture. Every year, the Zoroastrians gather in a cave. This is a cave, and they celebrate not the Go-Finishing part of it, but they celebrate the rebirth of the Zoroastrians in a sense. So this is a picture of that. So let me end with, I have a few more minutes. Let me end with one little story. Why did the family of Sheryar migrate to India? So what happened was that Mani's grandmother the family was a very poor family. And she lived in Kurumsha, and she made a living by knitting socks and scarves and selling it to the rich Zoroastrians. So she used to go to the other side of town for the service to get orders and then make these things. So one day she was coming from one side of the town to the other side to her home, and she had to pass through a little area which was a Muslim locality. So there were some boys seated in the veranda, and they had watered a part of their house in front of them. And they told her that, look, this is holy ground, and infidels are not allowed to walk over it till sundown. So she looked up and she saw that it's not going to happen. And she desperately prayed for God to intervene. And she just sat there while these young boys, some upstarts, guffawed and made fun of her and cracked vulgar jokes and so forth. Suddenly, out of nowhere, an elderly Islamic person comes, a Muslim comes. He looks at them, takes in the whole scene, goes to her and says, at first he upbraids the boys for their behavior, and then he tells her, addresses her as, my daughter, come. I know what has happened to you, why you had to go through this. I'll escort you to your home. And she's escorted to her house. She turns around and the man's not there anymore. And then they catch the next available boat, and they come to India. So you'll find a lot of such stories of how the Zoroastrians suffered during that Qajar dynasty, and also. So this book actually ends with 1922. And then at the end of it, I've given a little bit of Babur's overview of Babur's life till 1969, but it ends at 1922 with some pretty amazing experiences of his close disciples, where a group of Muslims enter Manzil-e-Mim and want to actually beat up Meher Baba or drive him out of Manzil-e-Mim. And the Mandli tell him to run away, jump over the wall, this, that, and the other. Baba comes out and meets the whole group and then tells them that I am a true Muslim. And then he narrates passages from the Quran in Arabic. And the Mandli's jaws dropped. Baba knows Arabic and he knows the Quran. And at that time Baba was talking. So these are some of the instances that have not appeared in other books. So please feel free to get a copy of it.